is Tolu. I'm a Christian dating coach and I specialize in showing you how to go from single to married in a year. Now, I'm super excited to announce that our Wife in Waiting program is open. Now, if you don't know, Wife in Waiting is my group coaching program where I show Christian single women how to start going on quality dates within the first 2 weeks of joining the program and how to get into the right relationship in a 90-day timeline. This is a program where I work with you in a community of amazing women globally. You get access to coaching calls with me in this group bi-weekly. You also get access to my dating curriculum that contains my proven dating strategies on how to meet men online, talk to men, flirt with men, just off the top of my head, how to meet men organically. And apart from coaching on calls, I also coach you in our community platform where I review your messages with men. I look at how you're talking to men. I answer any and all of your questions. I review your online dating profiles. It is an amazing community. And we're open, okay? We're open for the next 2 weeks, after which we will close for the year. So if you're ready to start 2025 with a very clear picture as to how to start meeting men. And in fact, when you join Wife in Waiting, you immediately get access to my resources on learning the right way to meet men in your routine and set up your dating profile and how to talk to men, flirt with men, and navigate any current situationships you may be in. It is honestly just an amazing community of women, and I'll encourage you to apply. Let me just drop the link. I'll encourage you to apply to become a sister. It's $320 monthly if you want to become a sister in the Wife in Waiting program. And my next podcast episode is actually going to be, depending on when you're watching this, is going to be with one of our sisters. We call ourselves Sisters in Wife in Waiting. It's going to be with one of our sisters that was in the program. The program is for 12 months. She was in the program for 6, and she's now a married woman. She met her husband within the first 6 months of the program, and she's married now after waiting for years. And we had an amazing conversation on the podcast, so I'll be sharing it soon. But yeah, if you are ready to really take 2025 seriously and date with the right strategies and be in a community of honestly supportive, amazing women so that you know you're not alone, definitely join the Wife in Waiting program. It's what I wish I had when I was starting my dating journey. So it's important for you to, and it really came by instruction from the Lord. Wife in Waiting, as you know, we host our annual prayer convention that is also from the Wife in Waiting program. So it's really, so many stories have come through clients that have gone through the Wife in Waiting process. A woman that was single for 5 years met and married her spouse in 5 months. A lady that had never been in a relationship that was stable within the first 3-4 months of the program is now in a healthy, stable relationship. And you learn so much about yourself through the Wife in Waiting process. So strongly encourage you to apply to become a sister. It's $320 monthly if you want to join, and you will have access to not only myself in coaching, but my curriculum that I use to show you the right way today to get married, and you will have access to our amazing community of sisters. So let's talk about boundaries with men. I just wanted to mention Wife in Waiting to you. So if you're considering, figuring out dating and you're tired of doing it on your own, definitely join the Wife in Waiting sisterhood. Okay, so let's talk about boundaries with men. Right. So if you have any questions for me, drop it in the question box. You'll excuse me, I'm a bit tired today, but drop it in the question box if you have any questions. Let me know where you guys are tuning in from. I'm always curious. So just drop it in the comments where you're tuning in from. But when we talk about having boundaries with men, I mean you don't know how to say no. Okay, that's the summary of it. You struggle to how to say no, when to say no, whether you should say no or not say no. And the thing about boundaries is you really want to make sure that your boundaries are your own. So what I mean by that is boundaries, if you grew up in any form of Christian community, you are taught certain boundaries, like no sex before marriage. What else? That's the most prominent one I can think of. Don't talk to some cultish like churches, they don't even want you dating outside the church, which is a whole other level. But you are taught these boundaries that are imposed on you. The problem is that they are not your own boundaries. So one of the steps I show my wife in waiting clients is how to know your own boundaries. Because if you don't know the reason for your boundaries, you're not going to respect them, and that man won't respect it either. You don't want to carry boundaries that are not your own. So if you, for example, let's take a very clear boundary of no sexual activity before marriage. Okay, so what does that mean for you? Apart from the fact that you know you're not supposed to do it, why do you not want to do it? It's really important that you know your own boundaries and you're able to stand on them, so that when you're communicating your boundaries to men that you are talking to, entertaining, it comes from a clean space. So what I mean by that is it comes from a confident, clear, communicative space. You don't want to sound anxious. You don't want to sound unsure. You don't want to sound demanding. You want it to be a clear expression of who you are as a person, because that will communicate to the man that this is important to you. And the thing is, if you don't have boundaries with men, do not expect them to respect your boundaries. Right? So what I mean by that is, if you tell a man, for example, that you're talking to, you're getting to know that, okay, you have a boundary of no sex before marriage, or let me take another example. You have a boundary of not talking past 11 p.m. A boundary can be anything. That's why I'm just giving various examples. But for the main purpose of a boundary is like a demarcation. Like, beyond this point, you cannot cross except and unless. That's basically what you cannot cross. You cannot have sex with me except and unless we're married. You cannot call me past 11 p.m. except and unless we're in a committed relationship or whatever. A boundary is just a line, a clear line of demarcation that basically says except and unless. These are the conditions within which you can move forward. The problem is those conditions are not your own. So what happens as a result is, when you're trying to communicate it to men, you either do it too early or you do it too late. Like, I'm a strong advocate of not telling, practicing practicing abstinence and not having sex before marriage. You don't need to be telling that to every man you're talking to. That's a very big mistake, because that is information that should be reserved for a man that has shown he is even worth having knowledge of that part of your life. So I teach my clients to vet men through the process of actually getting to know them first before they introduce them to their boundaries. Because the first thing that should be coming forward is your standards. So what I mean by the difference between standards and boundaries are, standards are a general filter. Boundaries are a point of demarcation. So boundaries just ensure that your standards stay in place. So a standard could be he's a man that has a relationship with the Lord. And a boundary from that could be the fact that you don't want to be talking to any man that doesn't respect your own relationship with God. You don't want to be talking to any man that doesn't value a Christian community. That could be a personal boundary. It usually comes from a standard. So if you have a boundary that you cannot link to a standard, that's already problematic. So that tells me that your boundary is shaky, right? So if you think about it, when we're talking about having boundaries with men, it should be linked to a standard. It's like if you enter an aircraft, right? There are certain things that need to happen before you get into that aircraft. For example, you need to have booked the flight, checked in. You need to have you need to have booked that particular flight and checked in for that particular time, and so on and so forth, before they even let you on the plane. That's the standard. Now, the boundary is, once you get on the plane, you have to sit at your allocated seat, and you have to follow the procedure that they give before takeoff. That's the boundary, right? So a standard and boundary are linked. So if you're saying, oh, I'm not having sex before marriage, and you're just saying it, but there's no reason behind that. You need a deep anchor. And I'm using this example because I know, as a Christian woman, I know you can relate to it, but really anything applies. So you want to think, what's the standard behind that? So what I like to teach my clients, yes, definitely I'll save the life. What I like to teach my clients when we work together inside Wife in Waiting is to make sure that they're clear on, okay, what's the standard behind that boundary? What does it actually practically look like? How has it shown up in your life? And I coach them through that process so that when they're talking to men, they are confident in what they're communicating, they're clear on their values, and they are naturally able to attract interest in men because they are so confident and clear around why they have these boundaries. And then another thing is, you really want to make sure you can keep your boundaries, because if you can't keep them, there's no point saying it. If you're telling someone that, oh, for example, I take exercise seriously, and you never exercise, they never see you exercising, it's going to create an impression of you being superficial. It's going to create an impression of you being lazy. And it's just because you said something that you cannot do. So a lot of you are saying boundaries that you don't keep. I'll give you another example. You tell a man that is taking advantage of you that, I don't put up with this. I don't put up with disrespect. You can't be calling me last minute. But every time he disrespects you, you keep showing up. Every time he calls to see you last minute, you go. He's not going to respect you because you're not keeping your boundary. So when I say you don't have boundaries with men, what I'm saying is you don't keep your boundaries with men. Okay? I just went through that long process because I want you to understand what a boundary is, how it's meant to look like, if you actually have a boundary that you're adhering to, and how it actually plays out practically in the dating scene. You're not keeping your boundaries with men. You say, oh, I'm not dating a man that doesn't want to get married. I'm not dating a man that is just going to drive. He's not going to take me on a date. But here you are dating a man that's doing the exact things that you say you won't do, and you've told that man you don't do these things, but you're still there. You haven't left. In the past 6 months, in the past year, you're still in the same place. So he's not going to respect you. He's not going to believe you. And why should he? Because what you're saying isn't what you're doing. So what I like to do with clients inside the Wife in Waiting program is really make sure that they're clear on, and it's part of our dating curriculum. So basically the dating curriculum is where I outline for you the different stages of dating leading to marriage, and it's quite simply single. You'll be single, you'll go on dates, you get in a relationship, you'll be engaged, and you get married. So I walk my clients through the dating curriculum. Literally outlines every single thing you need to know from start to end. And you will hear one of our Wife in Waiting, the Wife in Waiting sister I referred to earlier, that was on my podcast recently. I'm going to share the podcast once it's been edited and everything. So excited for you guys to hear it because I know it's going to encourage a lot of you. And you'll hear her talk about that process of being able to follow our Wife in Waiting path so that when she met her husband, it was simple and clear for her to know exactly what to do. And that's how you want to be dating. You don't want to have boundaries that are not clear. You don't want to have boundaries that are not rooted. Right? That's why I said a boundary needs to be connected to a standard. There has to be a reason behind your boundary, and it has to be your reason behind the boundary. Okay, it can't be your parents' reason, it can't be your pastor's reason, because some of you say, I'm dating this man. Some of you I'll tell you how this plays out, and it's a big problem. Some of you are dating men because your pastor said that's your husband. Some of you stop dating people because you went to one prophet and they said that's not your husband, or your parents don't approve of that person. Those are not your boundaries. Those are your parents' boundaries. So it's important for you to have your own foundation. And one of the steps that we take through the Wife in Waiting program is helping you to establish what your own foundation. I really like my clients to know how to hear from the Lord on their own. So inside Wife in Waiting, a lot of you are privy to our prayer convention. Like our sisters, as we call ourselves, have access to those resources. They have access to our prayer convention since we started it for the last 3-4 years. They have access to resources on learning to discern how the Lord speaks to them. And of course, they have coaching with myself. They drop it in the community or they show up on the calls. And if not, they can listen to the recording to really make sure that they're supported fully through the practical process of applying prayer in their dating lives. And the thing is, your boundary needs to be from a place of prayer as well. So what I mean by that is there are certain boundaries God will give you he didn't give somebody else. For example, he may have told you can't kiss anybody. You can't kiss till you are married, till your wedding day, sorry. Some people have that boundary. And for others that doesn't apply. He may say, to you that you need to focus on only men that do A, B, and C. For you, that may be a boundary that doesn't apply to someone else, which is why it's so dangerous to carry someone else's boundaries. And when it comes from a place of prayer, it is rooted. You will have conviction. And what I mean by conviction is basically confidence in Christ that this applies to you. A lot of you, the reason your boundaries don't work is because you don't have that confidence. you're not even, there's a huge question mark around that boundary. You don't know why you have that boundary. Like, oh, I can't date anybody that does A, B, and C. Why do you have that boundary? You don't know. It's because somebody told you that that's the boundary that you should have, whether it was a parent, a pastor, a spiritual mentor, or somebody. And that's not going to work. And you will struggle to keep your boundaries with men as a result. And let me tell you what happens. And if you have any questions for me, drop it in the question box. The name of the podcast is Dating Done God's Way. That's my podcast. It's called Dating Done God's Way. You can find it on iTunes and SoundCloud. Just search Tolufalo Day podcast. You will also see it. But yeah. So the thing is, if those boundaries are not your boundaries, you aren't going to keep them. So if you're wondering why you always end up having sex when you say you won't have sex, or you are staying with a man that we both know is not your husband and isn't good for you, it's because you don't have a reason that is personal behind that boundary. And what happens as a result is you feel stuck. Okay? You feel stuck as a result. So a lot of you will have found yourself in a position where you feel stuck in the situation with a man that you know is not right for you, but you've been dating him for years. You feel stuck in the cycle of men. Every single man you meet, it's the same problem. No matter how many times you tell them you're not going to have sex, no matter how many times you tell them you're looking for a serious relationship, no matter how many times you tell them you want to go on dates, it doesn't work. It's because you don't have a reason behind your boundaries. So it's really important for you to have your own conviction and a personal understanding of, okay, what is the point of this particular what's the point of this particular boundary that I'm exercising, and why is it even in my life? Okay, so through the curriculum of Wife in Waiting, when you go through, and the reason, and this applies in the single stage. So unfortunately, the single stage has been has been abused. There's not enough understanding around the value of being single. And the truth is, when you are single, you are closest to getting married. Okay, when you're in a relationship with the wrong person, you are in the wrong position to be getting married, because you're in a relationship. But when you are single and you are free, I want to be clear. When I say single, I mean you're not entertaining time wasters. You're not talking to that ex that won't disappear because you refuse to block his number if that's what it takes. I'm talking about you are free. Okay, there's no man occupying your space, your time. You are only entertaining quality men. And this is a process I teach my clients inside the Wife in Waiting program, so that literally I will walk with them through, why are you talking to that man? Let's talk about what his purpose is in your life. What exactly is the point of you having that conversation? When are you guys going on dates? I provide that certainty for my clients to be able to take the necessary steps, so that they are only available to men that they can actually commit to. Okay. And I also walk you through, if you're not meeting any men, I troubleshoot with you through the Wife in Waiting program to make sure that we fix that problem and we address exactly what you're doing wrong or what you need to do differently to start meeting the right men for you. So if you know that you're struggling in any of these areas, definitely join Wife in Waiting, because apart from my personal support, you also get to learn from other women that are also on this journey, and you also get to learn from me coaching them as well, on how you can improve in your dating and start seeing actual tangible results in the quality of men you're attracting, to the point of actually getting into a relationship within a 90-day timeline of talking to a man. Okay, so the thing about not having clear boundaries is your relationships will be very murky. So what I mean by that is you will tend to go with the flow, and let me know if you've done this. You tend to go with the flow with men. You tend to compromise a whole lot. When you don't have clear boundaries, you will compromise a lot. And as a result, you will attract a lot of unqualified men. The problem isn't even that you're attracting them, is that you entertain them for a long time. So a lot of you, because you don't have clear boundaries, you will find that you've been entertaining the wrong men for months, sometimes years, and you don't even realize that you are the reason that time is just passing you by. It is not because God has isolated you or he hasn't heard you. It's because you're refusing to do what needs to be done. And usually it's because you don't know what your boundaries are, which is why in the Wife in Waiting program, the single stage is super important, because when you are single, you can really understand what is the point of my singleness? How does God communicate with me? How exactly am I supposed to recognize what my husband looks like, so that when I am dating, I am a complete woman that is looking and positioning strategically for a complete man. So in the single stage of the wife in waiting dating curriculum, I walk you through that process. I provide tasks to make sure that you understand the practical element of what I'm teaching inside the wife in waiting dating curriculum. And this is why when you are dating, you need to know why you're single. Your boundaries will help you understand why you're single. Think about it. Like I explained about the airline and booking a flight and hopping on a plane. The standards and the boundaries they set determine how many people are going to be on the flight, the weight limit and so on and so forth, whatever. Even look at it in the professional context. If you're an organization that is hiring and you're in the HR department, there are certain standards you're looking for and boundaries. It helps you define what exactly it is that you want in a candidate that is qualified for that role. So if you don't have taking that same principle into dating, if you are not clear as a single woman as to what your standards and boundaries are, you don't know why you're single. You won't know why you're single because you won't be able to explain, okay, I'm single because I'm only available to A, B, and C. And that will now inform, A, B, and C will now inform what you need to do in your singleness to take you out of singleness into the right relationship. So through the wife in waiting process, I do that with you. The dating curriculum outlines what you need to consider in terms of standards, boundaries. It outlines what exactly you need to do differently, what you need to stop doing. And clients have said, like, through the wife and waiting process, they've just seen changes even in them, in their independent lives outside dating. And that inevitably is what makes you attractive and visible and desirable to the right men, right? And here's another thing. Let me know if this is helpful. Tap the hearts. If you have any questions for me, drop it in the question box. Here's another thing about boundaries. When you don't have boundaries with men, you're making it difficult for your husband to find you. Okay? You are making it very difficult for your husband to find you. And the reason I say that is because you are just available to every man. If he's attractive, you are there. Maybe your thing is, I don't know, as women, we all know this. You have a thing. I don't know whether it is the height or the skin color or the voice or the dressing. You have a physical thing. Okay? There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying. So if you see, maybe your thing is voice. Okay? Maybe you like a guy with a deep voice. If he has a deep voice, you are gone. You are gone. He could be talking about, in fact, he could be saying gibberish. You don't care. You are gone. Like, you are there for months. And that is how, if we're going spiritual for a bit, that's how the enemy catches a lot of you. And the thing is, you know how scripture says, thank you, Lord, he just reminded me, how scripture says, when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord raises a standard. Or the Spirit of the Lord puts them to flight. So the boundary is what helps to make sure you don't fall. Right? So even if he has a deep voice and I'm only available to Christian men, and this guy is an atheist, if he likes, let him sing with that voice. You won't move. Because unfortunately, this isn't for me. Or rather, fortunately, I know this isn't for me. But because you don't know what your boundaries are, you follow that voice. You'll be following him. Only Lord help you. You'll be there for years in some cases. And that's how you become a placeholder. I explained in the previous live that a placeholder is a woman that is just occupying space. That's all you do. You're just occupying space. And sometimes he even gives you the title of girlfriend, but he won't marry you. You are occupying space till the woman he wants to marry will come. That's your only function. But when you know your boundaries, in fact, it's impossible for you to occupy that space, if at all, for a long period of time. It's impossible. Because your boundaries are like, they're like triggers. Like, it will give off a signal like, something is off. So that's why, like, for my clients, I like to make sure that they have standards and they know their boundaries, so that when they're dating with standards and boundaries, and they are not, it's not possible for them to fall. right? It's not possible to fall. And even if you do fall, because even scripture says, the righteous man will fall 7 times and rise up again. I'm paraphrasing, but the point is you will fall and you will stand. So even if you fall, you will stand. You know how to stand, because your boundary is kind of like a support system, helping you. It's kind of like a what's it called? A scaffold. It helps you stand again. So it's important for you to know what your boundaries are. And without having boundaries, it's very difficult for your husband to find you, because you're available to every man, right? Any man that approaches you, you're available, and that is not what you want. You only want to be available to men that match your standards and your boundaries, because that inevitably means that they match your values. So you only want to be available to that. And another mistake I see is you communicate your boundaries too early. And a lot of you do this because you're afraid. The first thing you say to men is, I'm not having sex till marriage. It doesn't do anything. Have you realized that? Because I want to make sure I'm communicating to you here. It doesn't do anything. He will say yes, okay, no problem, and he will still try it. It doesn't do anything. So I really don't see the need for you, and it's something I coach my clients on. I do not recommend sharing, and that's just one example. It could be anything. It really could be anything. Telling him, I don't take calls after 11 p.m. Or it could be anything. Anything that is like a boundary, I don't advise sharing it early, because that man may not be here next week. You need to start treating your life and information on you like a highly valuable resource. You don't share it with everybody, and you don't share all the information, right? He needs to earn access to that level of understanding of you by proving that he is genuinely interested. And he doesn't need your help to do that. When a man is interested, he knows what to do. He will be clear in his communication. He'll be consistent. He will make sure that he shows you that he wants to connect with you. He'll be willing to compromise in your favor. He doesn't need your help with all of that. They instinctively know what to do. But you will discover that when you don't have boundaries with men, a lot of them do not know what to do. You'll find that they take advantage of you. They are very confusing. You are constantly compromising in their favor. You find it difficult to connect with them. It's like they're closed off. And this is usually, symptomatic of men that are emotionally unavailable, do not want to commit to you, are counterfeits, if we're using the spiritual term, and are just there to pass time and waste your time. Okay. So you definitely want to have boundaries with men when you're dating, but you don't want to lead with your boundaries. You don't want to lead with your boundaries. You lead with your value, but the way you lead with your value depends on why those boundaries are important to you and knowing what your standards are as well. So inside Wife in Waiting, we have what we call a declaration, the Wife in Waiting declaration. It's a set of declarations that our sisters say. They're encouraged to say it every day, and we definitely say it on our calls to just remind them of the foundation of what they desire when it comes to the kind of partner they want. And the reason I'm mentioning it here is you need you need to be convicted that you are called to marriage, and there is the opportunity to meet men that do match what you want, so that you are able to stand by your boundaries. A lot of you, the reason you are not standing by your boundaries, apart from they are not your own boundaries in the first place, you share them too early, you give too much information to men, is also because you don't have boundaries that have a personal importance to you. Okay, they don't carry weight in your own thought process, so it's difficult for them to carry weight with other people, not just men, right? So another thing I wanted to talk to you about is, and let me know if this is helpful, tap the hearts. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about is when it comes to value visibility. So all my clients have a visibility strategy. So a visibility strategy, as I like to call it, is pretty much making sure that your men are seeing you, right? And it's just to make sure that at the very foundation of things, you are visible. Like, men are coming into contact with you, they are seeing you. But then there's value visibility. So value visibility speaks to the way men that are seeing you value you. Okay, So literally, you know how, I'm sorry for the analogy, but this is the fastest I can come up with. You know how you're going to the market or you're going to a store, you're window shopping, you're looking for particular items with a particular price point, you're looking at certain things. Maybe if it's a bag, the size of the bag, the quality of the bag, the make of the bag, the brand, so on and so forth, to be able to know what the right bag is for you. That's how men date. Okay. Newsflash. That's how men date. Regardless of, and yes, I'm a modern woman, I'm a Christian woman, but this is just a fact. So regardless of how you want to put it, how educated, intellectual you are, that is how men date. I'm educated, I'm intellectual, and I'll tell you that it's just, it is what it is. They will put you in a category, right? And you definitely do not want to be at the bottom of the pile. So that's what I mean by value visibility. How do they estimate your value? They don't need to. The same analogy I used of window shopping. There are certain stores you don't need to enter to know that it's going to cost you. You see a Chanel store, you already know it's going to be an investment. Okay. But if you go to a thrift store, you already know that it's going to be budget friendly. You don't need to you don't need to touch the bag. You don't even need to see the bag to know. You can tell from the store. So what I'm essentially saying is your value visibility, the way your value is being perceived is like a thrift store. You want to be perceived like Chanel. Okay. You want to be a Chanel, not a thrift store, knockoff, rip-off handbag. You want to be like the Chanel of the bags, right? Top quality, top tier, luxurious experience kind of thing. And that's what I mean by value visibility. So in other words, what do men see when they see you? The reason I'm bringing it up here is a lot of you have low value visibility. So what I mean by that is men are seeing you like thrift store, knockoff, rip-off. Which is why they put you in the, and this is just facts. Don't take it personal. You know I'm very honest here. This is how I talk to my clients as well. Very direct, very honest, because I'm trying to help you. I'm trying my best to help you. So I'm going to tell you the truth. So, knockoff, rip off, and how you know they see you that way is based on how they treat you. It's really that simple. And the reason I'm bringing it up as pertains to this topic is your boundaries will naturally help you elevate how men treat you and how they see you. It will naturally help you package yourself better, for lack of a better way of putting it. So it's not only for the men that you're talking to, it's most importantly actually for you to know where you need to work on. To know what exactly your weaknesses are and where you need to strengthen you, and where you need to turn those weaknesses into strengths and make your strengths even stronger. To give more definition, so to speak, to what is important to you, why it's important, you need to embody that. Because men, as I was talking to my wife and waiting clients this last weekend, and I said, and I will say it to you as I said it to them, they have a sense, they can smell. No, was it wife and waiting? Oh yeah, I was talking to the sister that I'm sharing the podcast with. So I mentioned this on the podcast as well. She's she was a wife in waiting client. So they have a scent. They can smell. They can smell when you are uncertain. They can smell when you're unsure. They can smell when you doubt yourself. And like animals that pick up a scent, they will go after it. So do not expose your weakness. And a good way to, and I'm not saying hide it, because I don't want you to have any trigger. I don't want you to have a traumatic response to what I'm saying. In other words, you think the solution is to keep quiet, or because that's not going to solve anything. It will come out. You will hear it. We talked about it on the podcast, but they will pick it up. You will have a scent. Okay. You won't even need to talk. It will be something that has stuck to your spirit, for lack of a better way of putting it. So it's naturally, and I don't want to get too spiritual, but you will naturally attract men that can smell that kind of problem. And the problem I'm talking about here is it could be insecurity, it could be a lack of confidence when it comes to talking to men, understanding how to share what is important to you. It could be a self-confidence crisis, anything, anxiety, emotional instability. They will smell it, because these things have a scent, even in the spirit. But I'm not getting into the spiritual side of things, but in any case, it's a pattern, and these men will pick it up. So you want to, and when you have a boundary, it's like a way of washing it off. So what I mean by that is, it's like having a soap and a sponge and cleaning yourself in that area. Because when you are clear on why that boundary is important to you, whatever it is, like I said, I give you two extreme examples: not calling past 11 p.m. or whatever time, and not having sex before marriage. It's important that you're clear on your why, because if you're not clear on your why, you will fall faster than when you are clear on what your why is. And when you are clear on what your why is, even if you fall, you will still stand, and you will stand stronger. Okay, so with men, when I talk about value visibility, if your boundary is unclear, usually you'll be on the low end of the value pile. So what that means is they will pick up any of these scents that I just mentioned. They won't take you seriously. They will waste your time. They'll say all sorts of things, mind you. They'll say all sorts of things like, oh, I'm looking for something serious. You know, you're an amazing woman, blah, blah, blah. They will just say all sorts of things. And it wouldn't match the actual experience you have of that person. Just like if I'm going to the thrift store or the Chanel store, I can still be a nice person. It doesn't mean I'm not aware that this is a thrift store and this is a Chanel store. So just because a man is nice doesn't mean he has lost sight of the fact that you are presenting like a thrift store handbag, like a knockoff, like a ripoff. It doesn't mean he did not see that. He saw it. He is just, being nice about it or whatever. So I don't want you to ascribe, but he's such a nice person, he treats me well, blah, 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 to what I'm saying. I want you to ascribe the actual experience of getting to know that person to what I'm saying. What is the record that you are actually seeing? Do they stick to what they say? Are you noticing that men tend to say one thing, do something else, take advantage of you, abuse you? Are you noticing after 2 weeks, after 3 months, things crash? You need to fix your boundary. And one of the steps that I take with wife-in-waiting clients is we do an audit. We do a collective audit on our coaching calls where I look, because I know every single client of mine's, and specifically wife-in-waiting, I know where they are in their journey, every single one of them. And I know why they're there and what we need to work on. And I follow up with them diligently. Even sometimes they forget, and I remind them that this is what we need to work on. This is where you are. The reason for that is to make sure that their value visibility gets high. Okay, so what I mean by that is they naturally start attracting a higher caliber of men online and in their routine. Okay, I remember one of our sisters was saying that she just started noticing that men were seeing her more and were approaching her, were seeing her more and were giving her more attention than before. It's because of the cleanup that we do inside the program, right? So when I'm talking about value visibility, it's actually really important. So if you're noticing that men are not taking you seriously, they're taking advantage of you, then you have a value visibility problem. If you're noticing men are not seeing you at all, your problem is visibility. And we address both inside wife-in-waiting, because I'm teaching you from the ground up the right way to date as a Christian single woman that desires marriage. So I'm teaching you the entire process of how to date differently so that you can actually start going on dates, meeting men, and getting into a relationship within a 90-day timeline. Okay? Of meeting those men. Because you won't be wasting months with the wrong men. We pick it up really quickly when you're in the wife-in-waiting program. We know the men you're talking to, and when I say we, I mean myself and my team. I know the men you're talking to. I know how long those conversations have been going on for. I know the conversations you're having. I know where the challenges are. I know these things with my wife-in-waiting clients, with all my clients actually, but specifically with wife-in-waiting, I know all these things because we want to make sure that the men that are in front of you are actually men that are qualified for where you want to go, which is to be in a relationship leading to marriage, right? And if you don't have these boundaries with men, and you don't even know what boundaries to look out for, it will be difficult for you to do that. And it will be difficult for you to be visible to the right man for you. Okay? Let me know if this is helpful. Tap the hearts. Drop a question if you have any for me. Okay. I'm just going through this. So how can I reach out to you? Can I afford your sessions? The only way to work with me is with my sessions. That's it. That's the only way to work with me. you can watch the live videos on this page. I do a ton of live videos, particularly for those that maybe cannot afford my services. I do a ton of live videos, but if you want to get deep dive with me, it is inside a container of my sessions. So that's the only option, really. I'm off sex before marriage because God had to separate me from a lot of things, and I have decided to honor God with my body. Fantastic. But it's hard for me to communicate it to men, and they won't have it. So it's hard to have a relationship. How do I go about it? That's a great question. And you've drawn something to my attention that I realized when I was talking to a recent client that joined my program. And I was like, oh, I'm going to share it with you guys as well. Sex before marriage, right? Yes, it's a decision to honor God with your body. Absolutely. And you have to also find a reason why that is important. This is why I said you need to know your why. And what else? Okay? What else? Yes, you're honoring God with your body. Fantastic. But what else? That's the first thing. Secondly, it's... I'm thinking of how best to say this. I'll say it as I'm thinking it. You want to understand something, right? The reason men are approaching, and this isn't you in particular, but it's the thing I wanted to say, and I know it will help you as well. When I was talking to this recent client, if you're noticing that men just want sex from you, it is not because you're celibate. Okay, it's not because you're not having sex. It is because that is all they see. And this is something that would have applied anyway, even if you were not celibate. I hope you guys are grasping that. Okay? I hope you guys, because I'm seeing a confusion between, oh, I'm celibate and men just want sex, with men just want sex. I'm seeing a confusion in conflating the two to mean the same thing, and it's not the same thing. Your celibacy is just highlighting the fact that this is all men want. That's what your celibacy is. Because I have clients that are in relationships that they were abstinent throughout and they got married. Okay. So it's not, there are men that are practicing abstinence. I have coached some of those men as well. There are men that are practicing abstinence. There are men that are celibate. So the problem isn't that there aren't any men, or there are any men that don't want, or there are any men that are willing to wait. The problem is you are not attracting them, right? And sometimes you may even be the first encounter. A man may not have practiced celibacy before you. It doesn't mean he's not your husband, and it doesn't mean he can't do it. It just means he hasn't done it before. That's a very different situation to a man that doesn't want to do it at all and doesn't respect your boundaries. That man will not only have problems not respecting your boundaries with sex, he will have problems respecting your boundaries in other areas because he doesn't want you enough, right? So what I'm saying in essence is, if you are saying they are not having it, it's because that's all they want. When you increase the value visibility that I was talking about earlier, that is, so you would have noticed this problem. It's just, it would have been something you noticed later if you were sexually active. You would have noticed it later if you were sexually active. It would have taken you longer to notice it because, I mean, you'd be having the sex, you wouldn't know. But then you will start noticing that that is all they are doing with you. But it would take you a couple of months to figure that out. Some women refuse to see it for years. But because you have decided to honor God, you see it faster. So it's not like it's because you're honoring God that they are not available, that they just want no. It is because you're honoring God that you're seeing it faster, actually. That thing was there regardless. So what you actually want to work on is building, and it's tying into someone else's question, how to increase your value visibility. It's building areas in your life that make you naturally attractive, feminine. And this is what I teach clients, like how to leverage your femininity. It doesn't have to be anything specific, or it doesn't have to be anything heavy. It could literally just be the way you smile. It could be the way you create comfort when they're talking to you. It could be the way you have conversations. So what I help my clients to discover is, where exactly is your value mostly pronounced? And how can we leverage that in the way you date, so that it is natural for you to be meeting the kind of men you want on a habitual basis. So I can't tell you one area specifically, because I don't know you. I don't know your strengths. I don't know your weaknesses. I don't even know your patterns. That is something I do with clients when we're inside a coaching container, so that I'm able to specifically say, with you, this is what I'm seeing. With you, this is what I'm seeing. And this is where we can leverage your value. And this is where we can leverage your visibility. Or let's try this out. Like, one of the clients that I've shared that I was going through, because like I said, I know every single client's history, problem, where we're doing the work, where they are making adjustments, because I take this work very seriously. So I was going through one of my past clients. She's now in a healthy relationship. I was going through her when she started, and I remember I was just going through the notes, and she had been saying, I don't know what's going on. Online dating doesn't work. Since after the pandemic, literally, this is what she was saying then. Since after the pandemic, I'm not meeting good men, blah, blah, blah. Now, after going through my process, she's in a healthy relationship with a man she met online. What changed? She approached dating differently. Okay. And specifically to your question, she increased her value visibility, because I showed her how to leverage opportunities within her routine to meet the kind of men she wants. So naturally, she just attracted that man into her life. And when I say attracted, I don't want to be woo-woo here, but when I say attracted, I simply mean she created space and opportunity for them to naturally collide in time and space. Okay. So if both of you, for instance, if you go to a coffee shop at 9 a.m. every day, and John goes to a coffee shop at 9 a.m. every day, it is inevitable that you and John will see each other more than once in 1 week. It is inevitable, because you have created the opportunity for that to happen with time and space. Time being 9 a.m., space being the coffee shop, right? So specifically so I can't tell you, like, generally speaking, what your value is. That's something I do with my clients, because I can go into their process and look at what they're doing wrong and where we need to make adjustments. And then circling back to the question of it's hard for you to communicate it to men and they won't have it. You need to find out why that boundary is important to you. Like I said, yes, honoring God, fantastic, but what else? And then you also want to ask yourself, what are these men actually bringing to you? Because that will force you to ask yourself why they are demanding it in the first place. So what I mean by that is, when you start looking at yourself as you are honoring God with your body, that you are being honorable, why is that man deserving of that honor? Of course he isn't. But ask yourself that question. It will make that conversation easier for you to have. And it will make it easier for you to understand why men are only interested in sex with you. Right? So how it will make it easier for you to understand why men are only interested in sex with you is because when you ask yourself that question of, okay, how long have I known this guy? Why is he asking me for sex? What exactly has he shown me that he's somebody that is being serious with me? And so on and so forth. Like, whatever questions come into your head, it will be easier for you to know why they aren't deserving of it, number one, and what you need to work on to make sure you don't attract those kinds of men anymore. Like, if you notice, John doesn't have a job, never takes you on dates, only calls you at 1 a.m., always sexualizes you. You need to ask yourself, why is that the only type of man I'm attracting? How did John even find me? Like, how? How did he find me? It means that you're not in the Chanel store, like, going with the analogy I've been using. And mind you, there are some people that will wander into Chanel, if you remember my analogy. There are some people that will wander into Chanel that can't afford Chanel. But that won't, it only becomes a problem if the only people that come into Chanel are only people that can't afford it. So if you're attracting multiple Johns, that's the problem. If you attract a John once in a while, it happens. It's just normal. But if you are seeing only Johns, that is only men that just want sex are coming into your store, there's something that needs to be shifted in the way you're presenting yourself. It could be spiritual, it could be emotional, it could be physical, it could be all three or two. I don't know, because I don't know your story and I don't know you, but that's what I would say. And that's why you're not getting to the point of a relationship. And a lot of you, there's just a lot for me to say here, because I see that there's a general lack of understanding in this area. Because a lot of you, when you say, oh, I'm abstaining, I'm not having sex, and no men want to wait with me, it's not because of the sex. The sex is just the first thing that showed you this isn't the right person for you. If you were sexually active with them, they still will not want to have a relationship with you. Right? It's just that the value isn't being communicated in a way that they see it as being worth that investment. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Not everybody can afford Chanel, but you need to know your Chanel. And you need to know your market, right? So that's where visibility comes in, and how you position yourself in terms of, like I walk clients in Wife in Waiting, like you literally have access to my resources, like the curriculum and my dating templates, so that you know how to start conversations with men, how to flirt with men, how to practice your femininity. Literally on our last call, we were role playing how to talk to men about what you want and how to approach men without being awkward. You have that access inside the program, so that I can walk you through that process and help you build that skill. And this is why, so that you can see a shift in the quality of men that you're attracting and the quality of men that are approaching you. Because when you are talking to men that have the same values as you do, these conversations will not be difficult, because both of you are on the same page. If you're both in the same tax bracket, talking about traveling for the holidays is not awkward, because both of you can afford to travel. In fact, both of you love to travel for holidays. But if you're talking to somebody that has never traveled, doesn't like traveling, then it becomes an awkward conversation, because there's no value alignment. So you want to ask yourself where you need to work to be visible to the kind of men that want what you want. So what I'm saying in essence is, the relationship, getting into the relationship isn't the problem. It is making sure it is the right relationship for you, right? So if you had sex with these men, for example, they still wouldn't give you a relationship. And even if they entered into a relationship, it would be a false relationship. So when I say a false relationship, I mean a relationship that is not going anywhere. And some of you have been in these types of relationships where it feels like you are just carrying the title of girlfriend, but there's nothing else. You hardly see him. He doesn't take you out. He doesn't want to spend time with you. You're just carrying the title of girlfriend, and only Lord knows if he's seen other women. That's a fake relationship. So that really isn't the problem. The problem is what I just addressed. Can no long distance be seen as a boundary, or is that actually me putting a limitation on my dating journey? I believe personally, and this is because I know you, it is you putting a limitation. I know the person that asked the question. It is you putting a limitation on your dating journey. With distance, see, it's just like saying, I just noticed that I just noticed my shirt had little pockets for my fingers. Anyway, it's just like me, it's just like you saying, I'm not doing online dating. And you're forgetting we're in the 21st century. The second most popular way to meet your spouse now is online dating. So you're cutting. I'm not saying you can't meet men organically. I'm just saying you're definitely limiting your options. And I work with my clients on both. I give them organic and online strategies, but I give them both because I want to make sure if and when you're ready, we can use online as well. Because it's just a fact. The virtual connections are taking over, especially after the pandemic. And with distance, that too is a fact. You may not be in the same location as the person for you. The question isn't so much, can I do distance? It's how long am I willing to do distance for? If I were to do distance, what are the circumstances around that? So I wouldn't put a blanket no on it. Except you have evidence that you are meeting the men that you want in your location. Like I like look at things from a factual standpoint. So if you have evidence to the contrary that actually I don't have a problem meeting men in my location, I meet a ton of people that match what I want, so distance will just be an inconvenience, that's fine. But if it's not an inconvenience and you're noticing that you have actually met people that you vibe with in a different location, it's just a question of, well, how much distance are you willing to do? And that will give you a better idea, because not all distance falls into the same bucket. Distance could be somebody that lives an hour away. It could be a different country. It could be a different continent. There are different levels to distance. So how much distance are you willing to do, if any, and why? That will be a better question to ask. I don't see any more questions, but yeah, so this is why I wanted to talk to you about boundaries with men. If you want to join the Wife in Waiting, yeah, some people do long distance by country. I'm just reading the comments if you're listening to this in replay. Yeah, some people do distance by country, and it's because they travel a lot. So, I remember one of my clients that she travels quite frequently. So she makes herself available for dates to the countries that she's traveling to. And it's not like with country, you want to be, I'll give you guys a little tip. Don't look at it as a different country if it's somewhere you frequently visit, or if it's somewhere that they can come and frequently visit you, because that's very possible, especially when you have a career that requires you to travel, right? And you will notice at different points in your career, you may be required to travel more. You may even be traveling more than you are in the country that you're resident in. So I don't like to limit options, okay? But yeah, this was fun. Do we have any other questions? But yeah, the Wife in Waiting program is open. So I'm just going to run you guys quickly through it. It's a 12-month group coaching program that I show you how to get into the right relationship in 90 days by talking to and going on dates with a quality roster of men. You'll have access to group coaching calls with me. You'll also have access to my curriculum and my dating templates, so that you know how to meet men, talk to men, flirt, be feminine, the right questions to ask, and so on. We have different dating templates on this, and you'll be part of my private community of sisters, as we call ourselves, where I coach you outside the recorded calls. So that's how the program works. If you want to work with me inside Wife in Waiting, you just apply with the link in my bio and first tab, or if you're watching this live, the pinned link. If you're the right fit for the program, I'll invite you to join the program. We'll have a chat and I'll invite you to join. It's $320 monthly to become a Wife in Waiting sister. And once you gain access into the program, you immediately have access to our resources, and you immediately have access to the community, the coaching calls, and the curriculum. Okay? So do we have any questions, or is everyone fine? We will be closing the program in 2 weeks. I just want to reiterate that as at the time of this training. Okay. So if you have any questions for me as pertains Wife in Waiting, send me a DM. Just drop me a DM saying wife, or just send me a direct question. It's fine. Either way, I'll be glad to answer you. But this was fun. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Take care. Bye.